Well, well, well. Look at who is clicking on this video now. Look at who it is. It's you. And I'm talking Saint Riot YouTube. Elden Ring, as it always is. And alright, the last couple videos I made have been strength build guy videos. And so, I'm thinking to myself, I gotta switch it up. I can't be making y'all watch Colossal Sword videos for the all of the end of time. So I did. I switched it up. I did some invasions with some other builds, and obviously we're at the end of the strength build stuff right here. But I made a video and I was doing strength build stuff, and in the video I was saying, that sometimes the long invasions don't make for excellent content, and but some of y'all are like, oh, I would like to see longer invasions, and I got to give you what you want, I keep saying, I'm sorry. I got to give you what you want. And so I'm going to kind of. Alright? I got a 10-minute long invasion on this video right here at the end. And not only is the invasion 10 minutes long, so that's me doing something that, I said, that's me kind of going back. Not really like, deceiving people or anything. But it might be a little bit of a surprise that I did that. Alright, even I feel like I'm reaching a little bit here. The point is in this 10-minute long invasion, which is a thing I just got done saying, I wasn't a fan of doing, there's also a blue in that invasion. And it's the only good blue. The only good blue. So it turns out that I do think that there's a cool blue spirit out there, or whatever they are in this game. Invaders and phantoms, co-op phantoms, and blues. In the Dark Souls games, they were all phantoms. They were like the ghosts of players. You were like playing as your own ghost. I'm not sure exactly what a furled finger is, or a bloody finger is. I'm sure there's some lore there to be sussed out, but I don't feel like doing that right now. I just want to say that there was a blue, and he was alright. Or I guess they were alright. Anyway, as we build towards that new horizon together, you, the audience, me, the storyteller, as we build towards that together, I said, well, here's some invasions to make this video nice and long. Let's have a sip right there. Boom. That wondrous physic. Those bubbles don't mean anything to me. Okay? That's what you need to understand. That's what you need to realize. Is that to me, those bubbles are health. I literally consume those bubbles to become stronger. And now we gotta find this host that fell down. I thought they were for sure a goner, but they weren't. They landed next to the big flower. And then they go up to the roots, and I'm thinking, how do you get to the roots, I don't. And it looks like, alright, well, we can get down here, but I'm going to need the silver cat ring, I think, or the long tail cat talisman. And then I was like, you know what, just screw it. I'll just take the long way around, because at least I know how to do that for sure. So here we go. And as we run up here, I got to tell y'all, I've been thinking a lot about those people on TikTok that they do live streams as NPCs. They have like an idle animation, and people donate to them. But the donations on TikTok are all, items. And it kind of went viral on Twitter the other day, and I've just been thinking about it a lot because it's so funny to me. Anyway, look at these two colossal swords. Look at that. I'm surprised they didn't hit me with that, honestly. But that's what happens when you fight on uneven ground. And Elden Ring loves to make you fight on uneven ground. I was gonna try and stomp through that, and then I remembered immediately before it hit me. You've tried this before and it doesn't work. Stomp has like near infinite hyper armor, but you can still be pancaked and you can still be launched. Those things surpass hyper armor. So too do headshots. Headshots will also stagger infinite poise or hyper armor, either one. And so yeah, I was like, oh, let's do some experimentation here. And then it occurred to me that we don't need to do that because I've done it before and the results did not work out in my favor, as it were. Got that cannon. Beautiful shot. Excellent shot. Look at that Lee Harvey Oswald magic ballista bolt right there. And he just keeps doing it. From the book suppository building? Are we crazy right now? I'm tired. So I just said book suppository building, and you might think like, oh, Saint's doing a bit. That was not a bit. I just, that's how tired I am. I said the wrong word. Instead of saying book depository, I said suppository, which if you don't know what that is, don't Google it, because you might get a picture of something weird, and you don't want that. But it's essentially medication that you take rectally. So there's a pretty big difference between a book depository building and a book suppository building. I wonder what one of those would look like. All right, we're back in the fight now. We're back in the fight. We got the Waves of Darkness. We love the Waves of Darkness. We love that follow-up, the heavy attack. It's so good. There's nothing more fun than playing with big weapons that send your opponent flying, or launch them into the air, or smash them into the ground with excessive force. You know, there's nothing more satisfying than that in terms of like gameplay. It's just so good. And they just keep going for it, man. They just don't know that it's gonna continue to be like this. But the host was able to get out of the Waves of Darkness, which was, you know, that's pretty clutch. You gotta give them credit where credit's due. They were not as bloodthirsty as this furled finger phantom, whatever you want to call it. Somebody the other day asked me why I used this sword. They said it was ugly. I think you're ugly. I think you're a disgusting pig if you think this sword is ugly. You probably use that berserker sword from Gus, which is a shameless ripoff of the Evil Dead films. Lee Harvey Oswald, back at it again. Ride, Johnny, ride. He just won't stop. I haven't watched this invasion since it happened, so I'm kind of here with you. I'm like, how does this end? I'm thinking it's gonna end in what we call the Hell Room, which is down there with the perfumers and the pages, because that room is absolutely hell. Yeah, that's where we're headed. Now, are they just gonna jump down here like a bunch of crazy people? Or am I going to knock him down with the cannon? Knock him down with the cannon. Oh, no. Oh, this is terrible for them. This is terrible for them. But I love it. You know, you got to give them credit. They did take out one of the perfumers. That's a solid start. I was talking about this the other day while I was streaming. Of all the invasions I've ever done that came to this room, and it's probably like 100. I've probably done like 100 invasions that came into this room. I remember this. I'll never forget it. There has been one group who survived. They beat that room with me in it. You know, think about that. 1 out of 100 attempts. That's insane. Alright, so I said I'd switch it up. I switched it up. Here you go. I got some sneaky invasions for y'all. Now, I'm a little, you know, dumb, so sometimes I don't sneak as much as I should. Sometimes I don't sneak a lot, you know, because I'm too, I want to get in there and fight, you know. Sometimes I do sneak for long periods of time. I've had some long invasions with this build, but they're never long like in any way that is suspenseful. They're long because I just start goofing off. As an example, I invaded these two guys, killed the Phantom, and then beat the host to where they would die in the next hit, and then I just disappeared, just did the old ninja vanish. And when I did that, I hid for probably like 5 or 6 minutes while this person just ran around trying to resummon their friend at the Grace, and I was just moving from bush to bush without them noticing, and it was hilarious. But you know, I'm not sure that would make it was great stream content, but maybe not good YouTube content, you know. But this invasion right here, this was both. This is good YouTube content, and it would be good stream content. We got the little bit of latency on the winged scythe, which means I can't heal if they hit you with that Ash of War. Your flasks don't work for like a minute, which is, you know, I think that co-opers feel like that's a big deal, but a pretty competent invader, I think, is just sort of like whatever, you know, like that's not something that they're too worried about. I am worried about that latency though, because that's insane that I'm getting hit from that far away. But that winged scythe Ash of War, like that is something that you can backstab pretty reliably. In this instance, I'm just gonna have to account for the latency a little bit, which means I'm gonna need to roll faster than I think I do, and I'm gonna need to be behind them sooner than I think I should, right? But if we get that backstab, this is pretty much over. I got the Misericord equipped here on a Dex build, and it's lightning infused, and we're in water, and I've got the Dagger Talisman. Like, you're not surviving that if you don't have just an absolute bulgo ton of hit points. I accidentally backstabbed my partner there. Not even because they were wearing the ring. I was legitimately trying to backstab the host, and my partner just happened to be standing there, and for whatever reason the game was like, oh, you're close enough for a backstab. So we're just gonna let it hit whoever. That's like some Dark Souls 1 type of backstab goof right there. I was surprised that worked. Well, I don't know if worked is the right word. I'm surprised that it happened. Speaking of Dark Souls 1 style backstabs, look at the hit stun, look at the run around, the R2 lover, the heavy attack lover punished for their lasers. That is, that feels good. You don't see that type of backstab happening a lot in Elden Ring. I don't, at least. But seeing it happen right there has got me looking for it more often now. That used to be a thing I did towards the end of Dark Souls 3. I would hit somebody, and then instead of taking the guaranteed second R1, I would instead run around, and if they came out of hit stun swinging, I would get a backstab. And that's a terrible strategy. It's a terrible strategy. If you're fast enough, you could do both R1s and still get that run around. And if you think they're going to come out of hit stun swinging, why not just parry them instead? And, you know, get 2 R1s and a parry riposte out of it instead of getting 1 R1 and a backstab out of it, you know? And the answer is because it looks cool, right? and that's what matters here. Now I've switched over. We're using the Pokin Boy. We're using the Thrustin' Man build. I'm using the short sword, which is something you don't see a lot. This is the only straight sword in the game that has the old Baldur Knight, Baldur Side Sword, and Lothric Knight Sword, and Fume Knight Sword. R2 is poke, one-handed and two-handed. This is the only straight sword that has that moveset in the game, which is a little surprising. Even more surprising is that the short sword is so bad in terms of its numbers. It makes no sense for it to be as bad as it is. It's got the lowest range. Well, that might not technically be true because those R2s are pokes. It might have more range, but the fact that its light attacks are this short, you know, it has to have like the shortest range, or at least be tied for the shortest range. There's another the Weathered Sword, I think is what it's called. It's also very short. But in other games, the short sword always had a higher critical modifier, and it doesn't have that in Elden Ring, which I am almost certain is something that they have overlooked. There's no reason for it not to at least have 110 critical modifier. It's had that in previous games, and it makes sense. It's a short sword. It's you know, it's small, therefore it's kind of sneaky. And if it's sneaky, it's going to, you know, be good at critical attacks. That's just Dungeons and Dragons 101 stuff right there. That's just the way weapons work in RPGs. So the fact that the short sword doesn't have the higher critical modifier is surprising to me. This guy really likes that Flaming Strike, and I really like to parry Flaming Strike. You can parry you can't parry the flaming part, but you can parry the striking part. You have to block the flaming part and then parry the striking part, and it's pretty free with most players. Some players will try and you know, trip you up, but most won't. And I'm just kind of sorting through the inventory here, I guess, trying to figure out like what I could use. Oh, so I guess we're gonna go with the bow. There you go, nice little shot. Looks like they got another phantom now, so okay, they're gonna be less afraid. This invasion a little longer than my typical. Boom, just like that. Yeah, no reason for this thing, the short sword. No reason for the short sword not to have a higher critical modifier. If it's going to have the shortest range and the worst damage, you know, let it have a good critical modifier. It does have, you know, all thrust attacks, and we've got impaling thrust on it, so this thing sort of becomes like a counter hit machine. And weapons that have counter hit capabilities are like, they have lower ARs, or attack powers, I'm sorry. They have lower attack power in this game. Which, you know, that's fair, because those counter hits can make up for the damage that's missing. I can understand that. I can understand it having, but at least give it the high crit range, you know? Like the Claymore, for example, is outclassed by both the Knight Sword and the Banished Knight Sword in terms of its damage. But it also has the poke on the heavy attack. And if you've got that poke on that heavy attack, that damage is capable of doing more than those other two weapons are. Like a fully charged heavy attack with the Banished Knight, or a fully charged heavy attack with the Knight Great Sword. you could make those do a lot of damage. I actually tested this out the other day against the Faramazula Beastman. I was doing it with a broadsword, and I could hit 1900 damage, and there was still a couple things I could have added to the build, or at least one thing I could have added to the build to make it even better, but I just didn't have it on me, so I couldn't test it. But 1900 damage on a charged heavy attack with a broadsword. So you can imagine with a greatsword, you could get up over 2000, right? Well, let's pretend that it's a thrust attack, right? Most things have pretty bad thrust defense, and let's assume that you get a counter hit, and let's assume that you have the Spear Talisman on as well with the Claymore. Charged R2 counter hit, that damage is going to far out, you know, despite the fact that it has, you know, less attack power. That one attack has the potential to do way more damage. And so that's how they, you know, balance that. And I get that. I understand that. I'm just complaining because the short sword should have at least 110 critical modifier, if not 120. I mean, let's be honest. If you gave the short sword 140 critical modifier, would anyone stop using Moonveil? No. So, you know, you're not really going to affect your meta too much. And I was saying that from like a developer standpoint, not a player standpoint. You're not really going to affect things too much if you were to do that. Anyway, this is it. This is the 10-minute long invasion. We're using the Pokeboy build. This is at level 81. This is a strength build. And we are using the Spear Talisman. All of our weapons do thrust damage. We are capable of, you know, landing big counter hit damage with this build. That's this build's entire function. But in a situation like this, we've got the 3 co-op players, and I don't know if you guys have been able to tell this or not, but the one who's shooting the cannon at me is good. This is a good player. They know what's up, right? So this is immediately going to be more difficult than it would if I were, like, if you invade 3 regular co-opers, that's a potentially, like, dangerous situation. If you invade 2 co-opers, or 3 co-opers, and one of them knows what they're doing, that becomes, like, very difficult to win. And that difficulty increases exponentially as the number of players who are good at the game increases. That probably goes without saying, but I've said it. So I'm just raining down hellfire here, and happy to do it. Happy to do it. I'm gonna make these claymen, you know, get their money's worth, right? Because I need them to do that. And I'm sitting down here, and at the time, I'm thinking whether or not this area counts as open world or not. I'm not sure. But if it counts as open world, then they could be getting their Crimson Tier flasks refilled by defeating, you know, these groups of enemies. And if that's happening, then you know, that's bad for me. I don't know if this counts as the open world or not, but it's something that, you know, I'm cognizant of. But you know, invasions like this can be fun, especially in a situation like this where you're not in a terrible situation right off the bat. My spawn point was kind of garbage for a 3-person group with one of them who knows how to play. You know, that's a pretty bad spawn point, because all they have to do is survive that first 5 seconds or whatever it is where I have spawn immunity. If they survive that, then I'm just right there on top of them, and you know, they can't hit each other. They're just gonna put me in the blender. So being able to get away and get on that bridge and them follow me, and then I was able to knock them off. It's not a bridge, but that ruin. Being able to knock them off of that structure and into the claymen that worked out really well. Happy for that. And hopefully this isn't open world, and hopefully they haven't, you know, been refilling their flasks by killing these claymen. And there's a group of claymen over here, as well as one of the Estelle pupa, larva, pups, I don't know. There's a little Estelle over here that will throw rocks, and you know, that's a potential for like pretty good damage, especially if they're going to separate themselves like this, which this person immediately realizes the mistake that they've made. But thankfully, this player who knows what they're doing also understands that like it's kind of their job as the co-op person to you know, try and cover this host's mistakes. And so they do try to do that. And you saw the patient rolling of the running heavy attack there, but just got the best of them by being in their face, you know. And they just got annoyed with me being on top of the fight, and they thought, okay, if I swing at him, I can turn that around. And I could sort of feel that anticipation building up, and so that parry felt pretty good. It felt good to go for that. But yeah, pretty long invasion here, as you can see. I wasn't sure who the host was and who the Phantom was at the time. I thought maybe the player who knew what they were doing. I thought maybe that was the host, but no, that was the Phantom. So now we have this host, and now that I'm actually fighting them, I'm seeing that we have about like a third of a second worth of latency here, and so going for that parry, that's going to be risky. I'm going to need to try and parry them before I think I do, which means I'm going to have to like really predict a parry. Thankfully, the carry and retaliation is good enough, and it's very forgiving about projectiles. Sometimes you'll try and parry a projectile, and you'll parry it, you'll get the little carrying bullets, but you'll still take a little damage, and that sort of thing allows you to kind of figure out what latency you're working with, if that makes sense. If you parry something and you're like, okay, that felt really good, but I still took damage, then that's sort of giving you a look into the latency that you're experiencing, right? It's like some players will throw fan daggers at players as a way to test latency. But, you know, like right here, that's like like a third of a second right there, in between the hit landing and the damage happening. And when they roll the attacks, you can sort of see the hit confirm on my end is there. And we've kind of gotten a hang of it now. But here's the problem. You know they're just looking for a summon sign, right? You know they're just looking for one. And this is why invaders, if you try and duel invaders, you have to understand that invaders don't know whether or not you have the blue thing on, or whether or not you're just going to summon somebody out of the blue. Invaders don't know that, and so invaders have to sort of play on a timer. Like, we have to be really aggressive. More aggressive, like I'm far more aggressive in invasions than I would be in the arena, right? See, now that I know they summon in for sure, I'm like, oh no, what do? I need a weapon that that's really gonna end this quick, so I go for the Lucerne. Thankfully, he's summoning up this Phantom. This Phantom has appeared in my invasions over the course of the past few months. Their name is Estes Delivery, and they show up as a blue, and then they immediately kill themselves, and they're the only good one. Later, y'all.